Welcome to the Windshield Chronicles, a mental sequence of operation. This episode brought to you by Rachel Kaiser and as part of her class, Take the Chemistry of Combustion into your classroom so you can have a complete understanding of the chemistry and the sequence of operation of combustion. Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining Did You Know the ESCO HVAC podcast. So we are still here at the 2024 National HVACR Education Conference, and I'm hanging out with Rachel Kaiser. How are you today?
I'm good, Clifton. This is an exciting event, and I'm really excited to join you this afternoon.
It has been crazy. It's starting to wind down. It's a little quieter out here. I think everyone's going, all right, my brain's in meltdown mode.
Yeah, and it's always the figure out what session or how they can bounce between them. Yeah. And I mean, the next round of sessions just kicked off.
Yeah, and I think we had like 100 and some sessions. So there's so many different topics. And your topic that you covered in your class, which I highly encourage everyone to sit in class and go through the full-length version of it. Yours was very interesting. I was curious myself.
Yeah. It was an exciting opportunity to share some more information on how you take the chemistry of combustion and take that into the classroom. And so it was a nice combo of offering attendees insights and some deeper dives into the whys and hows of the chemistry that was happening that you encounter in the field for combustion, and how to take that and take the step back and take that into the classroom in a way that distills that chemistry into a relatable, digestible output for any kind of learning group, and ways to introduce them to the complex interactions at the molecular level that aren't relevant, thinking about them as molecules and that molecular level that I, as the classically trained chemist, was taught to do. But why is that relevant to the kind of troubleshooting and safety paradigms and things that a technician and students learning to become that technician are going to care about?
Okay, now we're getting somewhere. Because I know myself and all educators that are joining us, I learn to fix things by understanding how they work. And it kind of goes back into education in the same way. I can't deliver something if I don't truly understand it. So is there a short form version that we can dive into?
Oh, yeah, I think so. I mean, essentially what I am trying to come across is that the course is giving you the base scientific chemistry that's happening before you go and take that next step of learning on how to leverage analyzers and take them into the field. So it is exploring what so many textbooks, and this is whether you're in a chemistry class or utilizing HVAC training manuals, they start with a very basic, and they always highlight balanced reaction to explain what's happening with combustion. And I dive at and explore if that basic reaction is actually relevant or helpful in the long run, because it gives a simplified, which makes it easier to talk about, explanation of what you want to be happening with combustion, but it is a non-achievable reaction. It is a situation in which it is saying, so the three basic pieces for a reaction that you need for combustion is you need a fuel, you need oxygen, and you need a heat source to move your chemical reaction forward. So what you usually see is a CH4 molecule or methane. You add that to two O2 molecules. You have your heat source, whatever that ignition source is. In my talk, I like to represent it initially as a match because it's something both real world, no matter what level a learner's at, they see that. Yeah. And then it's giving instructors, you build up on where that ignition source changes for those real world applications. Right. And each one of those, it's breaking down and taking those three elements always need to be there. But that reaction of where I started with that one methane, two oxygen, and an ignition source then balances out, and you only get CO2, water, and heat out. Sounds pretty simple. And if that's what we actually got every time, we'd just have CO2 and water. And why would we ever see these lawsuits around CO poisoning from combustion equipment?
Absolutely.
Why would we have degradation of our venting and heat exchangers and things from acids that we encounter?
Well, yeah.
Why would those types of things, if that was the reaction and the reality of what's happening from that chemical standpoint, then we wouldn't see those real world scenarios. And the real world is never as clean or as easy to navigate. Things aren't where we wanted them to be. And that basic equation is assuming that everything is exactly where we want it to be for that chemical reaction. So a key piece of that dived into is, for instance, those two O2 that we expect in that balanced reaction. They come from air.
Yeah, exactly.
We don't have an O2 cylinder sitting by everyone.
Straight oxygen, are we?
We are not. And so it was diving at, for instance, like real world, do we have any situation that is pure oxygen? And this, in reality, there are some examples in which we have pure oxygen atmosphere. NASA makes it during the Apollo, Mercury, and Gemini missions. Those particular space modules all had pure oxygen atmospheres. Well, Apollo 1 kind of used that pure oxygen atmosphere and had a significant fire that cost the lives of those 3 astronauts. So we see that pure oxygen atmosphere definitely supports combustion.
Right.
However, the cost and the control to put that pure oxygen atmosphere in those situations and into that environment out of the gate is costly and takes a lot of control that we are not going to have.
Yeah, not going to be available for the average homeowner.
It is not. Right. And I mean, we think we have air sealing issues right now in house envelopes or building envelopes of any type. If you were trying to ramp that all the way up to it being able to withstand and hold a pure oxygen atmosphere, that would be a whole new building hurdle that would be not easy to cross.
We're probably not going to encounter that.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's achievable, but not realistic.
You're right.
So, like, you dive at those and look at that. So then we are going to have that combustion taking place in air. Is air all O2? Well, obviously not. That's why we're talking about that. So it's exploring what the typical compositions of air are. Because what we first saw is that simple reaction. It always goes back to that simple reaction that people get taught, and exploring if that is truly what we would ever see happening. Because never does combustion mean that we aren't getting CO2 and water.
Right.
But what else are we getting and why?
Yeah, what other inputs did we feed into our reaction to be able to see what our outputs are? Yeah.
Correct.
So now you got the brain. It's awfully late in the day to be thinking this hard, but I love this conversation.
Well, so like if you look and just taking basic numbers, again, continuing on that, just looking at the oxygen component needed for combustion, roughing the percentages you're looking at so that it becomes an easy demonstration to bring into your classroom. You can take, say, an example I give is balloons. Right. So if you do one red balloon as one of the oxygen molecules you need, and you do another balloon as another of the O2 molecules you need, then you can proceed to do the same for the nitrogens to represent that. So you would have 2 red oxygen balloons to give your 20%, and then you fill it out with the other 80% nitrogen, which is an easy clean. That's not completely representative of everything you have in air, but it starts to give a super visualization for your students as well as for yourself on what that means, because that fuel that you need has to find that oxygen or you won't be having combustion. So if there's all those nitrogens around, and even, again, stepping back to that idea of keeping things simple, even if the nitrogens didn't react, just the fuel trying to find those oxygen molecules or red balloons amongst a sea of blue nitrogen balloons, you're instantly in a space that you start to see where mixing and having the air available for the fuel source to mix with, to react with, however you want to term that best correlates with the kind of program you already have in place. That's gives you the foundation to start to visualize why that can be problematic.
All I can see is colored balloons right now. I'm looking out into nothing and I'm seeing my colored balloons going, why isn't this hanging in every classroom in the country? It's so interesting to think of it from that perspective and the amount of work that has to happen in that reaction to be able to isolate those oxygen balloons out of there.
Correct.
Oh.
So I gave, like, as another tip, was whether it was balloons or another super easy and low cost way to do that is just get cardstock from any of the box stores in the colors, and those individual cardstocks can represent the molecules as well.
Sure.
And you can do the same where you start to set up that, say, the front of your classroom is your burner. And that would be where your fuel gets introduced. So you build cardstock, use paper clips and just the 4x6 piece of cardstock in the different colors that represent the fuel or the oxygen, the nitrogen, any of the components that you would typically encounter, even, again, keeping it more simplified. And you can show those issues with mixing because your fuel's coming in from one source. It's not coming from everywhere.
No.
But your air and oxygen is coming from another part. And so they are segregated.
Yes.
And that you can exemplify by using your learners as part of the environment to demonstrate where a burner and that ignition and everything comes from, and lay that out at that interaction of what's happening for the combustion.
I'm blown away. That makes so much sense when you present it like that. Okay.
So, I mean, in my outline, it was taking those each time of breaking down. So where I just laid out for air and that complexity it brings, you add in things it's bringing. I've talked about oxygen and nitrogen, but there's water in that.
Yeah, absolutely.
There's argon. There's, you can just keep adding.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's what the makeup of just the air is.
Okay.
However, that's looking at it from a stratosphere of the globe kind of makeup.
Yeah, absolutely.
Great. But we as humans are adding all kinds of chemicals into the air.
And detergents.
Yes. So anything, whether it's the people, the furniture, the cleaning supplies, you've painted anything, exhaust from other activities, be it cooking, vehicles, all sorts of activities that are in our world, which are next to where we have our combustion taking place with these appliances. Those all add additional chemicals into our air factor of our combustion reaction.
Wow. I've always promoted the use of dual pipe installations for high efficiency gas furnaces. I've always been a big proponent of that and been against using single pipe systems and using your interior air for your combustion and for the efficiency of it. But typically I was looking at that from the perspective of utilizing that oxygen rich, outside air. Now that I relook at it, it's like even more importantly, it's to remove the combustion air from the contaminations of the indoor environment.
And that's a fascinating point, Clifton, because so we do that even in those direct vent situations where you have those two pipes and you're doing the best that you can, thinking, hey, I'm going out and I'm getting fresh air for this combustion process. It's controlled in a much better way from not randomly pulling air from whatever room that appliance is in.
Yeah.
However, and I demonstrate this in my talk, was going through and going, that fresh air that's not as fresh. It still doesn't meet what we just described of even only having the oxygen, nitrogen, argon type of piece, because you have to look at what that environment is. As soon as you pipe outside, we have all these things happening now. Wildfires.
Yeah.
Look at the chemicals and the particulates and all of that. Even if you have gone to the step of you have exactly what you have supported of that, pulling in your combustion air from outside in its own pipe situation and setup, you're outside. You need to do some analysis and look to say, what else am I going to pull in even from there?
So there's no such thing as clean combustion air. That's what we're saying.
There is no clean combustion air. It's more what else could be pulling in. And it could be very environmental. It may be fine for a while and you have scenarios. I actually laid out one of those hypotheticals, sharing with the class is if you have that 2-pipe system and it's outside and that house is along a busy road, right by an interstate, you are automatically in an environment that has a lot more exhaust particles in it. Yeah. And that's going to instantly affect that fresh air and add to the chemistry that's going to be happening within that combustion chamber.
I want to go to this class now. I love this. I love the idea of that. I think that would make a very, very good show sometime to do some visual analysis of that, to be able to bring that to life. Because I completely, sitting right here, I'm imagining all of this in the process. And it helps us truly understand that science, the chemistry behind that reaction. What are we actually doing here? What are the byproducts of our reaction?
Correct. And that's the piece, because, just having, say, a car come by that, we'll go back to that direct vent, and you have that pipe outside. If just one car pulls up one day and has exhaust when that appliance kicks on and is pulling that, obviously not quite fresh, what we would like to think of, but pulls that air in with that car exhaust near it, that will make the additional byproducts and create additional chemistry experimentation within that combustion chamber for that day. But is that going to be what you're going to see within the system as degradation or outputs on one day? The answer on that is that may not be a critical factor. However, if it is a house with that vent
regular,
where it's every day by a big interstate where you have constantly pulling through, then you're increasing your probability of that additional chemistry happening at a level that then has an impact. Yeah. Because from a theoretical sense, we can draw on a piece of paper or on a computer screen all kinds of possible chemistry that could be happening with the number of contaminants that you can have in air, even alone, and continuing to go with the idea you have a simple methane fuel.
Right.
But is it enough and at a high enough concentration to be impactful? And we know that from all the experience of all the different instructors and technicians in the field, that they encounter things that there's definitely additional chemistry happening.
Oh, yeah.
Or they wouldn't be out there trying to problem solve a number of the scenarios in which they walk in. And it's about giving them some of that why, so that they can not only be better problem solvers when they encounter them in the field, but be safer for themselves and the occupants of the structure.
I love it. That is a fantastic topic for us to cover. I appreciate you joining us so much, and I look forward to a in-depth version of this down the road. I see it as a possible webcast, because now my brain just going, that clean air is not as clean as I thought it was.
Yeah, and that was only one part of the combustion we explored, Clifton.
Oh my gosh. All right. I'm interested. Well, Rachel Kaiser, thank you so much for enlightening us on combustion and helping us move that message forward, and helping educators and contractors and technicians and students all understand things by getting a deeper vision of what all these different balloons look like floating around in the sky.
Thank you so much, Clifton.
Right.